What's up, everybody? Welcome back once again to another episode of Axel's Analysis. As always, I'm the host, the man too cheap to make up his own name, so that's still an Axel Mulligan. Brilliant show this week. Absolutely brilliant show. I'd say it's the number 2 show that NXT have done. The best one, the only one that's better than this one, was the one where Bo Dallas got ejected from the arena, kicking and screaming and shouting out, "He touched my bum!" That was a brilliant episode, but this one wasn't that far behind it. The in-ring stuff was just absolutely fantastic. The storyline progression worked really well. You know, I can't put a blemish on the show. Well, I can put a little blemish on it, but I'll get to that later on. Commentary team was Philip Saxton and Renee, and I'm more convinced on Renee now. I think she works a lot better with these two than what she did with Rich Brennan and whether it was Alex Rawley or Jason Albert. The only problem is now is where's William Regal? Let's start putting his face on milk cartons soon as well, like I said about Jason Albert. But no, I'm a big fan of Regal on commentary, and if he has gone from commentary, that'd be a bit of a shame, really. But hopefully he'll be back. Hopefully it was just for that set of tapings that he wasn't there, but we'll soon see. Hopefully. First match of the night was a tag team tournament match. Bullshit Dempsey and Mojo fucking Rawley against the Vaudevillains. And I'm still a little bit confused as to whether the Vaudevillains are supposed to be babyface or heel, because 1 week, like a couple of weeks ago when they faced HuniCara and Kalisto, they were heel. And this week they portrayed more so of a babyface team. I like them. I'm not so convinced on the Simon Gotch character, but I think it works well with Aiden's character. And I mean, Aiden, if they're going to be a tweener team, Aiden's probably the perfect person to have in that team, because he can do the high flying moves like the top rope senton that you wouldn't necessarily see out of a heel, but then at the same time you can sort of play the ground and pound kind of heel wrestler, which is really good. So it's good that he's quite versatile. The end of the match came about. Mojo tagged himself into the match. Basically Dempsey was sort of hitting the shoulders to Simon Gotch in their corner. Mojo tagged himself in, and he sort of looked at Dempsey as if to say, "I got this, don't worry about it." Gotch, Gotch, he sort of propped himself up in the corner in between the two teams, and Mojo ran at him to hit a shoulder, like a shoulder thrust in the corner. Simon rolled out of the way. Mojo went shoulder first into the ring post. Gotch lifted him up on his shoulders, tagged in Aiden, hit a rolling senton, and then Aiden hit a middle rope senton. 1, 2, 3. And the Vaudevillains have advanced to the semi-finals of the tournament. They lead to their Mickey Mouse type music from 1927. And Dempsey and Mojo are in the ring after the match. And he did warn him. He said, "If you mess this up, I'm going to get you. And I'm going to unleash a wrath upon you that I've not done to anybody yet in NXT." And he beat the fucking piss out of him. And I was so pleased, because I don't like Mojo Rawley. I don't like bullshit Dempsey, but I just cannot stand Mojo fucking Rawley. And a lot of the NXT crowd agreed with this, because there was a big thank you bull chant that went out. Beat the crap out of him. Sort of left the ring, started walking up the aisle, came back, hit the bulldozer, and left the ring to another thank you bull chant. It was a decent segment overall. The match was okay for what it was. It was like a 3 or 4 minute match, and but the beatdown afterwards, it was really needed, because you got two guys there that, like, Mojo's been there for a little while now. Dempsey's only been there in his current form, so to speak, for a couple of weeks now, or a month or so. But Mojo's been there for a while, and he's not had a feud as such. It's just been, I'll face CJ Parker this week, I'll face Bo Dallas the week after, and then I'll face whoever it happens to be. And it's like Bo Dallas on the main roster. It just doesn't work when you do that. I mean, you can have that for a month. Then after that, you've got to sort of have an undercard feud, another feud then against the guys slightly higher up, then another one. You've got to build them up that way. I don't think you can constantly have like nothing matches, is what I call them, because they are. I mean, it doesn't always have to be that way. I mean, you look at Goldberg and WCW. You look at Ryback a couple of years ago. It worked for those guys, but it just doesn't work for Mojo because he's not got a lot of wrestling ability. Well, neither is Goldberg, but when you haven't got a lot of wrestling ability, you need something there to keep the fans interested, and Mojo doesn't keep me interested. So if you had a feud where he's going after somebody and then somebody's going after him, it keeps people interested. And I'd like to hope now that this is going to keep me interested in these two guys and seeing what they can do in a feud with one another. But we'll soon see what happens with that. We had a backstage segment next with Bayley and Sasha Banks. Sasha basically runs down Bayley saying that she's got no hope of beating her tonight in a number one contenders match for the women's championship. Bayley said, as much as Sasha wants a hug tonight, she's not going to get one. And Sasha says, good, because I don't want one from you anyway, basically. Just something just to build up the next match. Which, that was like the next part of the show, the match. And it was absolutely, I've written down here, it was fucking incredible. It really was. There was a little bit of chain wrestling at the start where there was a lot of pinning combinations attempted and sort of like front face. Obviously, you don't get to see like natural wrestling in the women's division anymore. We haven't had that for so long. I mean, Natalya versus Charlotte being at the sort of the one that goes against that rule, so to speak. But generally, it's just like a 2-minute match, and it's just like, okay. You go for a piss and you miss the match. Do you know what I mean? Piss break. But this was a brilliant match, I thought. Absolutely loved it. And it does prove that there are women in the WWE that can wrestle. I mean, I keep banging on about it, and everybody's probably getting bored of me saying it on here and on Twitter and wherever it happens to be. But Sasha Banks is just a phenomenal wrestler, I think. You know, she's 22 years old. Sky's the limit for the girl. It really is. And she always does something new that impresses me each week. I mean, this week again, it's not something new, but it impressed me still, was the backstabber into the crossface. That is just such a beautiful move. The way she just, it's just so smooth as well. There's no messiness about it. It's all just one swift movement. Backstabber rolls over into the crossface. Unfortunately, for Sasha on this occasion, she locked in the crossface, but Bayley managed to roll her onto her back, hook the legs, 1, 2, 3, and Bayley's the new number one contender. And it didn't make much sense to me. I'd rather see Sasha Banks versus Charlotte, turn Sasha face, keep Charlotte as this arrogant heel, and have Sasha, because you got the background story there. You got the BFFs when they've gone their separate ways now. It just makes more sense to have that match. But not saying that Charlotte and Bayley will have a bad match, but you've already got the story there now for Sasha Banks versus Charlotte. I mean, I know Bayley and Charlotte got a little bit of history, but not as much as Sasha and Charlotte. So, who knows? It could be a good match. It could be one of those like match of the night contenders like we had with Natalya and Charlotte. But I don't know. I'm just not happy with the way that they've just thrust Bayley into that position when, in my opinion, it should be Sasha Banks. Bayley went up to the stage at the end of the match, obviously, as they always do. Charlotte came out. She held out her hand to shake Bayley's hand. Bayley was a bit unsure, so Charlotte raised her hand in victory, and then they shook hands, and Bayley did she pulled her hands across her waist like, yeah, I want your championship. So, again, I'm looking forward to it, but I'm not overly fussed because I'd rather see Sasha in that position. I think she deserves it more than Bayley. I think she deserves it more than Charlotte, to be honest with you, but that's just my opinion. The third match of the night was HuniCara and Kalisto versus Buddy Murphy and Wesley Blake, new tag team match in ring gear. Well, Buddy Murphy's shorts are ripped and frayed and fuck knows what, look like a pair of my shorts, apart from I don't have those funky colours on them. And Wesley Blake, he had same design but on tights. Which it's a shame that they've sort of repackaged Wesley Blake actually, because I quite like the cowboy gimmick that he had, but hey ho, they tend to do that a lot with the wrestlers that I like repackaging. Then again, they repackage Husky Harris, and look what we got now. I liked Husky Harris, and now we've got Bray Wyatt. I'm not fucking complaining about that one, but hopefully Wesley Blake can have something. Obviously, it's not going to be similar, but hopefully he can have an improved character. It wasn't a bad match, but it just wasn't memorable, this one. It was just your basic, I've written here, your basic build-in a tag team kind of match, where we've only seen HuniCara and Kalisto once or twice before, and it was just something that, you know, they were against like a jobber team, really, because Buddy Murphy and Wesley Blake, have either of them ever won a match? No. Yeah, Kalisto and HuniCara picked up the win. They're into the semi-finals. The semi-final draw reads Enzo and Colin Cassidy versus the Vaudevillains, which should be a brilliant match, I think. HuniCara and Kalisto versus Sami Zayn and Adam Rose, again, should be another brilliant match. Which week those matches take place, I'm not too sure yet, whether that's next week, week after, or whenever. Not sure, but obviously we'll find out at some stage. Interview time next. Veronica Lane interviews the Legionnaires. She said, you know, you guys have asked for this time. What's on your mind? Marcus Louis, he's awful on the mic. He really is. It's not great. It's not good listening. Kind of like me. Marcus says that the tournament without the Legionnaires is nothing but a sham. Sylvester agrees with him, and he says that it's even more of a sham that you've got Big Cass and Enzo in there, when all they do is call people soft. He doesn't say soft, he just says soft in his little French voice. And he calls them a bit come see, come sa, which, yeah, we all know what that means. As I say, I'm not overly impressed with Marcus on the mic. A lot of improvement to do, but Sylvester's quite good on the mic, I've always thought. Like from the days where he was working with Rusev and Scott Dawson, Garrett Dillon, so on and so forth. So maybe Sylvester can help Marcus Louis out on the mic at the Performance Centre or wherever it happens to be, or maybe sort of get the rub from Sylvester to improve his facial expressions as well. They're just like, really? He sort of looks like he's been smacked in the face with a wet fish. Anyway, main event time, and it's the NXT Championship match. Finally, Tyler Breeze is cashing in his championship opportunity against Adrian Neville. And again, what an incredible match. In my opinion, this was better than the match from TakeOver between Breeze and Zayn. I absolutely loved it. Good little story involved in the match as well. Tyson Kidd came out just probably about 2 or 3 minutes into the match. He stood on the commentary desk, and then he sort of sat down, and he just had his head in his hands, looked on at the ring. No expression on his face, no emotion on his face. I don't think he even blinked. Renee was asking him, you know, do you want a headset? Is there anything you want to say? Nothing. Didn't even look at her to acknowledge her. Just focused on the ring, and I thought it was fucking brilliant, because it just shows the focus and the drive and the determination of a man, all from a blank expression. And I thought that was brilliant. I loved it. The highlight of the match, anyone who's seen it will probably agree with me. The DDT, the Tornado DDT that Tyler Breeze hit to Neville. Breeze was in the corner. Tyler ran at him. He sort of managed to avoid the attack. I think he got his knees up or his feet up or something. So Neville sort of stumbling around in the ring. And Tyler jumps off the middle rope, hits a Tornado DDT, and Neville lands on the top of his head, goes over, lands on his feet, and then just flops. Not quite Ric Flair style, but just sort of flops face first onto the canvas. And he just sold it perfectly, because Breeze hit it. It made it look like he'd hit it with more velocity than what he'd actually hit it with. You know, if you want a guy in NXT, there's two guys. If you want two guys to sell a move better than anybody else in NXT, Sami Zayn and Adrian Neville, two of the best wrestlers in the WWE right now. And this match proved why, that Neville is one of the best wrestlers in the WWE. Just phenomenal. The way he can put a guy over, as well as put himself over, is just... There's not many people better. It was fantastic. And I actually got a "This is awesome" chant. That DDT got a "This is awesome" chant from the fans, and it wasn't like a couple of fans; it was quite a few of them. So you know when you've done something special, when you've got, I would call them well-educated wrestling fans in Florida chanting "This is awesome." So fair play to both guys for that. That was brilliant. The end of the match was a really good little sequence of events actually. Both men were out on the floor, both down. Neville just hit a suicide dive to Breeze, so they were both down on the floor. And Tyson Kidd came down from the commentary desk, and in the corner on the ramp there was like a little vacant area which he sort of stood in. Neville got back to his feet first, sort of staggered around him, bam, hit a super kick to Tyson, who went down like a sack of shit. Neville threw Tyler Breeze back into the ring looking to hit the red arrow, and Tyson, he got back to his feet, jumped the rail, and he pulled Neville's foot from underneath him and caused a disqualification. Tyson then threw Tyler Breeze out of the ring. I've got to make sure that I don't get Tyler and Tyson mixed up now. Tyson Kidd threw Tyler Breeze out of the ring and started to beat the shit out of Neville. Eventually, Breeze gets back into the ring and sort of said, like, you know, what the fuck are you doing? You've just cost me my NXT Championship match. And Breeze went to town on Tyson. Brilliant, because you got two heels, two guys that they're liked but not overly liked, just clashing. And when Breeze started beating the shit out of Tyson, the crowd just erupted. It was brilliant. It really was. Neville came back in. He started like beating up, and then they were all sort of like beating each other up until Breeze and Tyson Kidd sort of came together to take out Neville. Yeah, Tyson sort of had him in a headlock and punching him, and Breeze is going in there with the kicks. And that all sort of went down until Sami Zayn came in. He threw both guys out of the ring to end the show. Brilliant. One of my favourite episodes of NXT. In the, what are we now, 3 years into the developmental system that they've, or 3 years since they've been using it as a developmental system. Absolutely brilliant episode. I give it an 8 out of 10 because it was just, it was amazing. It really was. And as I said, there's only one episode that's topped it in my opinion, and that was the Bo Dallas last match in NXT as Mr. NXT. That was the only episode better than this one, in my opinion. So anyone who's not seen this one, if you've got the network or if you're in the UK watching it on Sky Sports or wherever, get on and watch it just simply for the NXT Championship match and the women's title number 1 contenders match. Absolutely fantastic. Really was. Only one bit of news worth mentioning this week. Kevin Steen has finally signed for the WWE, and it was on Tuesday it was announced. I was off work, and I saw like a little rumour going around on Twitter, and I thought, well, I'll have a look on WWE.com, because we were all expecting it. Let's be fair, everybody's been expecting it for a long time. So I thought I'll have a look on WWE.com. Couldn't find anything. Sort of had a little look back on Twitter later on. Somebody posted a link to the story, and I loved it. There was a brilliant interview between WWE.com and Kevin Steen. Looks as though he's going to keep the name. I hope he does, because he's carved out such an indie legacy under the Kevin Steen name. To not keep it, if he were to use another name, I'd think it would just, what's the fucking point? But I've been saying a lot on Twitter. I can see WWE giving him a shite nickname, something along the lines of Mr. Sports Entertainment. Obviously, he's Mr. Wrestling, like he has been Mr. Wrestling in Ring of Honor. But I can just see them giving him a Mr. Sports Entertainment or something like Michael Cole. You know, he gives the Usos the Uso crazy. You're going to give him some shit catchphrase like that. So the longer he stays in NXT, the better, basically. Unless Tom Phillips is going to decide to come up with something shit for him, which, please, Tom Phillips, I'd like you, please do not give him a shit nickname. I'd just like to see him stay as Kevin Steen. Apparently he's been told to lose a little bit of weight, which is fair enough. He has lost a bit of weight over the summer already, to be fair to him. I think his last match for Ring of Honor is going to be on TV next week against Steve Corino, which I'm really looking forward to watching. You know, student against mentor. I love those kinds of matches. So yeah, there we are. Kevin Steen. So that means we've now got Steen, El Generico, if you're going by their old indie names, Sammy Callahan. He's in there. Solomon Crowe. He's not debuted yet as such. We've got Bryan Danielson in the WWE. Got Pac. You know, all these indie guys. You've got Kenta, Prince Devitt. It's like the indies are taking over. Tyler Black, John Moxley. What more can you ask for an indie fan? I'm an indie fan. What more can you ask for? All those guys, absolutely brilliant. It's going to be. It is like a takeover of indie wrestling. You know, people say that NXT is taking over. It's almost as though indie wrestling is taking over, and that's not a bad thing. On to the birthdays. August the 11th, Hulk Hogan turned 61. Bill Alfonso turned 57. August the 12th, Terry Taylor 59 and Spike Dudley 44. August the 13th, Jumpin' Jim Brunzell 65. Always been a fan of Jim Brunzell. August the 14th, Bob Backlund 65. Gino Hernandez would have been 57. And Kofi Kingston turned 33. August the 16th would have been Fritz von Erich's 85th birthday. And today, August the 17th, Paige turns 22. And please, I've gone off the WWE main roster because it's boring me at the moment. But I really do hope that they do the right thing. And I'm not saying it's been an English person or an Englishman, but I hope they do the right thing for the storyline and have Paige beat AJ to prolong the rivalry. Because if you have Paige win again, that's that gone then. But there's still so much more they can do with this. Anyway, this week's Grappling Greats. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, did Tom Jenkins, a little piece on Tom Jenkins. Last week was George Hackenschmidt. And I did say I was going to do Ed the Strangler Lewis this week. However, I missed probably, in most people's opinions, the greatest world champion of all time, or I say most people, a lot of wrestling historians, greatest world champion of all time, in their opinion, Frank Gotch. So I'm going to do Frank Gotch this week, and then it'll be Ed the Strangler Lewis next week. Frank Gotch was born in Humboldt, Iowa on April 27th, 1878, and his signature move was the spinning toe hold, also used by the Funks, you know, both Dories and Terry Funk. He wrestled his first match against Marshall Green on April 2nd, 1899, which he won. He wrestled and lost, this was in 1899, again. December the 18th, he lost to Martin Farmer Burns. He lost to him in 11 minutes, but Burns was so impressed with Gotch's performance in just 11 minutes that he said, I'll take you on and I'll train you. Burns trained over 1,000 wrestlers back in that time. That's unheard of now. You know, guys like Killer Kowalski who've trained pretty much anybody who's walked through the WWE doors in the last 10 or 15 years. Vern Gagne trained people like Ric Flair, Greg Gagne, a whole host of other names as well. Gentleman Chris Adams had his own wrestling school. But for a man to train over 1,000 wrestlers, Martin Farmer Burns is just unheard of, really, isn't it? He had a championship match, an American Heavyweight Championship match, Frank Gotch, which he lost to Tom Jenkins in 1903. But they had a rematch on January the 27th, 1904, which he won to win his first American Heavyweight Championship. He and Jenkins traded the title back and forth a couple of times. Gotch was a 3-time American Heavyweight Champion. But after he lost it for a 3rd time, he set his sights on George Hackenschmidt in the World Heavyweight Championship, which he won in 1908, which I spoke about last week. And then he won the rematch at Comiskey Park in 1911. Gotch defeated wrestlers such as Tom Jenkins, Dr. Ben Roller, Stanislav Zabisco, and Zabisco had apparently won over 900 wrestling matches before he faced Gotch. That was in 1910 they faced him. And Gotch is the only person. Sorry, he reigned as champion from 1908 when he beat Hackenschmidt to his retirement in 1913. And there's only 6 men that have held their world championships longer than Gotch throughout the history of wrestling. You've got Bruno Sammartino, his first WWE title run, Jim Londos, Lou Thesz, Vern Gagne, and Bob Backlund. The only people that have held world championships longer than apart from Backlund, the other 5 held their championships for over 7 years. Backlund was almost 6. So, not bad company to be amongst. He passed away on December the 16th, 1917 at the age of 39. Details of the death are a bit sketchy. He was inducted into 4 Hall of Fames: the Iowa Sports Hall of Fame in 1951, Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame in 1996, George Tragos and Lou Thesz Hall of Fame in 1999, and the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame and Museum in 2002. So yeah, as I say, that's just a small piece on Frank Gotch. I'll be doing Ed the Strangler Lewis next week. I'll just try not to make it as boring as what apparently his wrestling was. More on that next week. That's the end of the show. As always, look for me on Twitter at Axel Mulligan. Look for the Facebook page at you find out Axel's Analysis. Go back and watch all the other episodes that I've done. Leave comments and likes and whatever on the page below. Also, the usual shout outs to Tim Vicious at Tim Vicious and at Tim_Vicious. Check out Vicious Rants on YouTube. Sunday Segway podcast at Sunday Segway on Twitter. I must admit, I've not listened for a couple of weeks now, but I'm going to try and catch up throughout this week because I won't be watching SummerSlam because I don't give a fuck about it. So, yeah, I'll be filling that time up by listening to the Segway. Kinney's done an interview with Adam Cole, apparently, who's my favourite wrestler in the world right now, so I'll most certainly be listening to that at some stage. James Powers at James Powers 33. Check out James's Wrestling Ramble on YouTube, Podomatic, and Mixcloud. At PW Smart Talk, Pro Wrestling Smart Talk on Facebook. Wrestling Rambles at Wrestling Rambles and WrestlingRambles.com. Check out their website. They've got some really good blogs over there. Guys who just sort of evaluate anything they can think of to do with wrestling, which may seem of some sort of significance, and usually it's really good stuff. So, as I say, make sure you check that out. And at Tony Walker, or at Tony_Walker rather, check out his podcast, the Wrestling Matters Podcast, and you can find the Wrestling Matters Podcast on Twitter at WM Podcast. That's the end of the show, guys. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again next week.